Hello there, I'm John Rhodes, Senior First Group. I'd like to talk today about technology to move your CA2E model applications from RPG and COBOL to Java, the web, and cloud. Okay, so here's what I have planned today. I'll go through some brief background about the process, about CA2E applications and how we bring them forward. And I'll turn things over to Abram Darnutzer to do a detailed demonstration of the process and really give you a really clear and detailed understanding about how the CMM3 process works. And then we'll follow up with some discussion about next steps if you're interested in going forward. A lot of people tell us that they only see two possibilities for their CA2E applications. Now, first is to rewrite and replace them with a package, with a custom Java application, or something else. But that's a very large capital investment. The fact is that most projects of this nature tend to fail. They don't meet their budgetary constraints, they don't meet their time frames, they may not meet the needs of the business from a functionality perspective. Okay, a lot of them are canceled halfway through. Okay, the other option is to leave things as they are, but you know what happens here. Okay, it gets harder and harder to find folks to work on your RPG and COBOL applications. It gets harder to integrate these with newer technologies that may be running on the cloud, and your technical debt just tends to pile up, and it gets harder and harder to maintain these applications. So I'd like to talk about a third option. That is to move the model to a more modern environment and let you generate a modern web app and do that at a very fixed cost and very affordable cost. So here's what we hear from talking to CA2E customers that are considering this process. The first is they have thousands of functions and screens to migrate. Very large scale, very difficult projects. Okay, their system works well, but they want to do something new. They want to be able to re-platform from IBMI if they desire. They may want to move to a different database. They definitely want a responsive user experience that works on a tablet as well as the new widescreen monitors. They want something that has APIs built in. They want a future that has current tech standards baked into it, yet budgets are tight and people don't like risk. And then the developers that have maintained the C2 application must be productive in the new environment, okay, because they know the business rules, they know the business, and if they're not able to understand what's going on, then it's probably not a good solution for them. So we have a long-term solution that's called CMM3, and the purpose of this solution is really to extend the economic value of your SUI model by bringing it to a more modern environment and letting you generate a very modern solution. Okay, we believe that this technology requires some pillars, really, that must be in any process to modernize 2E. Okay, first is that the automation must approach 100% of that, because if it's at 90% or 80%, that extra 10 or 20% can really kill you. Trying to find the bugs or flaws in 10% of the code is truly a mammoth undertaking. Second, okay, the model environment you have in 2E must be preserved into the new environment. Your developers must be as productive in Plex or more productive than they were before. Third, the result must be maintainable and understandable to your existing staff and any new staff that you may choose to bring on. We must have guaranteed and predictable costs and timelines. Okay, these large projects, simply can't fail. They must go as predicted. And lastly, the result of the modernization must be a responsive web app with APIs out of the box. Okay, or else what is the point, right? So our solution, CMM3, really is built on these 5 pillars. Here's kind of an overview of how the process works. Okay, we look at the CA2E model, and we also look at the surround technology in RPG and COBOL and CL and other artifacts that are on the IBMI. We run an analysis process over that. Okay, we look primarily at the 2E model, but also the surrounding code. Okay, once we do this analysis, we can give you a fixed price for the migration. We can also give you a time frame and schedule and plan for the modernization process. Okay, then we move into a transformation process where we transform the 2E model into CA Plex. We help you generate Java from that or C#, and we help you generate web and mobile applications that can stay on the IBMI, but it can also be moved to Linux or Windows or other platforms. I want to stress that it's not just modernizing the application, we're also modernizing the whole way you develop applications. Okay, with the new environment, you can generate to modern databases like Oracle, like MySQL, like SQL Server, anything that has a JDBC connection. you'll be working with an HTML5 modern interface that runs in a browser, also runs on devices, and runs in a responsive manner that it automatically rescales to the size of the device. We'll be generating API interfaces. We're making use of inheritance. That's a very powerful programming concept that lets developers be much more productive than they can be without the inheritance. We'll be working in Eclipse and Visual Studio for your debugging and for your builds. You have all the power that those platforms have. CAPlex has a very sophisticated versioning and customization control that's baked into the product. You can then deploy your applications to whatever you want to deploy it to. You can stay on the IBM but you can also move to AWS or Azure. You can also move to any other platform that supports a Java runtime, which is virtually anything. And your developers will be much more productive with all these new technologies than they were able to be with the limitations they had around green screen development. Give you a preview of the demonstration that Abram will be doing. We'll be looking at a really new experience for your existing business logic. The new experience is going to run on all browsers, and it's going to run as a device application if you desire. Okay. The new user experience will show how the green screen gets transformed to a true Java web app. This is not a screen scraping situation. This is a true native Java web app that you're generating. Okay, we'll look at the database, how you can take the schema that's on your 2E model and bring that over into Plex and then generate SQL. Also visualize that schema via ERDs. We'll show in the demonstration how you can re-platform from DDS running on IBM to an alternative database like SQL Server. We'll show how that process works in the demonstration. We'll also show you how the code gets transformed. It gets transformed in a very maintainable manner. Okay, so you'll see how the action diagram in 2E gets transformed to action diagram in Plex, how you can visualize your code in new ways, and how you can just be a lot more productive once the code is transformed. And then last, I'm going to show you how this application can be deployed as a Java web app and really run on any platform. So you can stay on the Power, which is a very, very fine platform, but you can also move to Intel, Linux, or Windows, the cloud, or mainframe, or really any platform that you wish. Okay. Okay, Abram, I'm going to turn things over to you now to do the demonstration.
Hello, I'm Abram Darnutzer. I'm a senior application consultant for CM First, and today I'll be demonstrating the CM M3 process for modernizing a CA2E application. In this demonstration, we will be taking a 2E application written and generated in RPG and COBOL, and we'll be migrating that to a Java web application using CAPlex. There are three main points of this demonstration that I want to kind of go over. First, I'll be showing you the database transformation. We will be migrating the data model from the 2E application to the new Plex application. So you're able to maintain your database in the exact same way you would before, and also you're able to still use your existing database from your 2E application. I will also be showing how you are no longer tied to the I-series for your database. You're actually able to migrate your database to anything with a JDBC connection. In this example, we'll be using SQL Server. The second thing I want to go over is the business logic transformation. How all of your functions are migrated to CAPlex and will function in the exact same way they would in the 2E application. Everything will then be deployed as a modern, responsive web application using HTML5 and JavaScript and using Java as the backend. Finally, I'll be showing you development in the tool using CAPlex and how you will be able to develop going forward and how everything is created in a way for your 2E developers to transition to this new environment as easily as possible. So the first thing I'll show is our 2E model. This is the 2E model that was migrated. And just to show you the database relations, I'm looking at the applications entity. You can see it is known by application ID, has a lot of different fields assigned to it, and also has some other relations to other tables, seeing it refers to the product and refers to the person table multiple times, as well as the agent table. And so you'll see these definitions now in the migrated Plex model. So we'll switch over to that real quick. And so here's CAPlex. Everything in Plex is considered an object, so everything will have certain definitions. And so let's go ahead and look at the application entity, and we'll see how this is defined. And so you can see here This is the model editor. This uses what Plex calls triples. These are all just the definitions of this object. And you can see here that we're still known by application ID. We have this large array of has fields just as we did before. And we also maintain all of our refers relations as well. Another thing you can see here is in the actual physical table itself. We maintain all the implementation names that were being used in the existing TUI application. So again, you can use the existing physical tables that you're using with your TUI application. So there's no need to migrate if you don't feel like it. There's no need to really change anything if you don't feel like it. Another great thing about Plex and the way it kind of can visualize your data model is you're actually able to do diagrams within Plex. You can see here I have a small example of how some of these tables relate to each other. You can see here's our application table, and you can see our refers to for our agent and our refers to for the person table. In fact, you see it referring multiple times. But then you can also see the relations for the person table as well. You can see how it is has an owned relationship for both the person photo and person address. And then you can also see how the person address relates to refers to the state entity. So you can see how all of your data relates together in a very graphical way from within your Plex model. So as I said before, though, Plex is actually very agnostic when it comes to databases. And the M3 process really only requires the database to have a JDBC connection driver for it, which pretty much all databases have at this point. So I'm going to go into our Eclipse development environment real quick. And one thing that you can do with your databases is you can actually set up multiple database connections within the same application. Here is the example, and I'll be showing the SQL Server database in a second. But here's the examples of our two database connections that we have set up. Even though they're both connecting to the same database in this instance, if I wanted to switch this to pull the data from the old TUI application, so if I'm pulling my all of the old TUI application data directly from the iSeries, I can also then pull things like my tree menu, which you will see in a second. So my menu is data-driven, and I can pull that from a separate SQL Server environment if I want. And so all of these things can be configured. And you can switch what database your application is connected to just by changing a couple of configuration lines. You can see here I just set what database JDBC database driver I want to use. Then I make JDBC connection string to handle that. And you can see here I have some commented out codes for a iSeries connection. And so I can use the iSeries database connection driver and set up my data source to connect to a specific data library or even a specific library list. So migrating your data is also possible. And so what you see here is our migrated SQL Server database, which our migrated application will be running on. And so you can see here I migrate all my tables using the exact same naming. And excuse me if I can't quite remember all the names of everything. There we go. There's another one. So you can see here that I have a foreign key relation here for this field. And one other thing that's very nice about this is you're actually not required to use the iSeries naming. You no longer have a length naming restriction or anything like that. So any new data tables you can give it more meaningful names. For example, here I just called this person photo P for a physical table and had it keyed on have a field called person photo. And again, I have a foreign key relation to my person table, so that will migrate in the exact same way. So you can actually rename objects from within your Plex model, regenerate those tables, and just do a copy schema from the old table names to your new. Advantages to this come from when you have like third-party sources that need to query your data and they need to be able to understand what they're looking at without having to have a sheet assigning and showing how all the fields relate to each other. They can be much more self-explanatory. But again, this is all just optional. If you want to continue to use your iSeries database, there's nothing stopping you from doing that. So that's very nice about the process. Okay, so now we'll go on to our next point, the business logic transformation. So what we did, what is done when we migrate and your application is migrated, we will take everything that was in your TUI model, everything that you set up, all your local code, how the fields are set up, what kind of functions are being used, all of that will be migrated as is. And so I'm going to show a function within the TUI application. in this work with person table. Oops, sorry, wrong key. There we go. And so you can see here we have some local code and 3 different user points. Initialize subfile control, initialize subfile control preconfirm, and process subfile preconfirm. I'm just going to show the code for process subfile control preconfirm. And so you can see here we have a simple case statement. We check to see if the command key was hit was for the add button. If so, then we call the edit person table and we say we want to reload the subfile. All right, so now let's look at what was actually migrated. Here is the function within Plex, and so this is the Plex action diagram. The syntax of the Plex action diagram is very readable, and especially coming from a 2E development environment to this, it should seem very familiar, just some minor syntax differences. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to show the local code in the Plex model, in the action diagram, sorry. So you can see here we have some extra user code here, but this is some of the migrated user code. And you can see here that the in Plex we have a thing called edit points, and these are basically the same thing as user points within the 2E environment, except in Plex you're much more free to create new user points, put them anywhere in the code, edit code in a lot of more different places than you would in 2E, so you have a lot more customization options. But let's go ahead and just expand these. And you can see here we have code that looks very similar to code you would see in 2E. And here's the specific example that I just showed you. This is user process subfile preconfirm. You can see that we have code to check what command key was pressed. If it was add, we come in, we call the insert person table, and then we reload the subfile. We can even look at the parameters being passed. We're passing a specific ID value, which I believe has a literal value of 0. And you can see, -1 actually. And so you can see we have the exact same thing that we're doing here. So all the code was migrated in the exact same way, and the patterns are set up to behave the exact same way that 2E would behave. And so let's go ahead and show the application then, show it running. Here is just a simple login screen. We're just going to go and log in, and we're going to load up our menu. First thing I want to do before we get to our function is give you a small tour of the application. This is the out-of-the-box menu system that comes from an M3 process. You can see here we have an accordion menu here on the left. Everything in the menu is data-driven. These things can all be stripped out of the menu data files that you're using for the original 2E application and applied here, and then customized in any way that you see fit. And so let's go ahead and go to the person function, and we're going to go ahead and call it. And you can see here this looks kind of similar to a 2E screen, and actually let's go back to the 2E screen and I'll just show you exactly what it looks like. And you can see here we have large header areas where, say, work with person entries. We have a static CTL field here. We have 3 subfile options, and then we have 2 F-key options. And we also are able to filter on the last name. So let's see how we migrated this then. So what you see here is I've just kind of edited the header. So instead of saying work with persons, just say persons, because it's much more concise, and I feel like it's a little more modern, user-friendly way to say something. You can also see here we have our F-key buttons. All F-key and subfile options are migrated as buttons by default. So out of the box, all these things are here in the way they are. Other thing that's kind of nice about this, though, is all the F-keys still work. So if you have a bunch of power users who are just so used to using the application in a specific way, they can still use those F-keys and they will still work. Another thing you may notice is the subfile entry. We no longer have an edit box where we just type in the subfile option that we want. Instead, here we just have a checkbox where you would check what you want to run, and then you run the specific subfile command on that option. And so for here, I'll just go ahead and look at the addresses of this person, and we'll call the address function. So let's go ahead and go back to this. I just want to make a point that this is just the out-of-the-box subfile interaction that we kind of have. If there's some other idea or some other way you want to customize how you want your users to interact with subfile, that can certainly be put in the patterns and affect everything throughout the application. So some other things I kind of want to touch on here is let's go ahead and just show that the filtering still works. So again, just functioning exactly the same as it would for your normal TUI users. One great thing, though, about this this process and the migration and bring it into a modern web app, it's not just a screen scraped app. It is a true HTML5 JavaScript app that is dynamic, and you can kind of customize it to fit however you want it to fit. And so you can do things that aren't typically possible in just screen scraped applications. So here, let me go ahead and clear my filter and go into the addresses here. And just to show you, for a quick example, sorry, let me zoom out. We have Google Map integration directly in. And this is nothing mind-blowing, but this is something that would not be possible at all within your TUI application. So the migrated app is a full HTML5 JavaScript application. Anything that you can think of doing within HTML and JavaScript, these can be put into your application. So to go back just to show some other examples and things that kind of come out of the box even. So out of the box, all of your subfile functions have the ability to export to PDF and to a CSV file. So just with one click of a button, the application can read the data and then export that to a CSV. So if you have some third-party app that you need to get your information out to another client or another group of people, you can easily do that from within the application without having to go through some other complicated means. Other things that are great, you can initiate emailing directly from the application, even pre-populate emails. You can even do email servers just directly from the job itself too, if you want to attach files and things like that automatically. If you're on a tablet, which I can't do here because I'm on a desktop, you can actually initiate using the phone make an actual phone call on a phone or a tablet, depending on how you have it set up. You can link to help systems directly from within. And these are things that you can put back in the Plex patterns and have available throughout your application. So you can add this help system link in one place, and it will automatically be in everything that is in every screen function within your application. Other simpler items, like just displaying a PDF directly, embedding it directly within your application and within a page, you can do that. Embedding Word documents directly within a page, you can do that. There's nothing really stopping you from doing all of these custom things. And another thing about migrating your application is you are no longer stuck with developing things in the way that you had to develop them in TUI. In Plex, you can be much more free-form and develop things in completely different ways than what was possible before. So, as an example, I'm going to open another version of the Persons tab. And one thing that you might have noticed here is it opened a new tab. Basically, the out-of-box menuing system will treat every menu item call as equivalent to their own green screen emulator session. So you can have multiple versions of even the same function open and do work and come back and forth. And so your clients and your users' workflow can be as efficient as possible right out of the box with the application. So to go back, this is just a simple example of a custom grid. This is just grid data displayed in a much more visual way from within the application. So if you have some system where pictures are much more important and worth 1,000 words and will help the user be more efficient and understand what they're looking at and interact with the data better, you can put that directly in the application. And then you can still have these functions work kind of with the same flow. So you can see here I can call the same existing address function that I had before, view the map on it, do whatever I need to do. So you can have all these things work in the exact same way, but just present them in a completely different way. Another example of how to present things in a completely different way. Here's the same person function, except we're using a tabbed interface allowing you to mess with subsystems of the person table and even the person's details themselves. And you can also see we're using just a more normal grid interface, but inserting pictures and photos within that as well. So if you still want to use like a more normal grid system, but again, a picture would be much better, or a much better way to get information across to your users, you're able to do that. And then also you can see down here we have dynamic JavaScript graphs being graphed purely on data that we're loading into a grid. So you can have dynamic charting and graphing within your application to further visualize your data and make it easier and more efficient for your users to interact with. So the migrated application is very powerful, and really the only limitations are your imagination and really what you want to do with it. So you're no longer just screen scraping an app and putting it out on the web. You have a true responsive HTML5 JavaScript application. Okay, so I just showed some small examples of the actual business logic itself. So now let's go into the actual tool that you will be developing in, looking at Plex and looking at Eclipse, the Eclipse environment, and how this works, and then looking at one of the real powerful things about Plex, and I've mentioned it a few times but have not gone into detail, but the inheritance in Plex. So let's go and look at the model again. So first, I'm going to look at the triples of a couple of functions. This is the custom HTML grid function. You can see here in Plex, to inherit from something else, you say that item is something else. So if function A needs some functionality that needs all the functionality that's available in function B, you could say function A is function B, and then function A will automatically have all the things that function B had. And then you're actually able to further tweak that and customize it to fit whatever function A's needs would be. So we're going to do a simple example here. We have in our custom HTML function, you can see we're inheriting from a function called hello world. Same thing for our tab. Down here you can see hello world. And so what is the hello world function? I'm just going to go ahead and open it. And I'm just going to open the panel for it. And you can see simply we just have a button that says hello, that's called hello world. And I'm looking at the events that correspond with this button. When I have the physical event of press, so basically when I click the button, I'm triggering a logical event in the code called hello world. And so let's go in the action diagram. Look at the events. You can see I have my logical event code for hello world. And you can see I have a dialog message where I'm going to say hello, and then I have an actual parameter that I'm going to be passing in. So you can see here I'm passing in a greeting for hello to world. And so basically by default, for anything that inherits from this, they'll have a button on there called hello world, and when they click it, it's going to pop up a dialog message that says hello world. So now let's actually look at the examples that are actually using this, and let's look for hello world. And so here's our hello world, and you can see here that so in Plex, everything that's inherited is kind of grayed out, just to show that you're not able to directly fully edit it, but you are able to tweak and override code and things like that. So here in the actual parameter mapping, I'm doing a local override, and so you can see here I'm changing the greeting to be Abram. And so on this function, actually, instead of saying hello world, it's going to say hello Abram. So it inherits all the code that the hello world function had, but I'm able to kind of override and tweak it a little bit. Okay, so let's actually go see this at runtime. So here is the normal tabbed one. This should be doing the default. So when I hit hello world, you can see pops up a dialog just says hello world. And as I go in the person tabbed version, you can see once I click hello world, it's actually saying the hello Abram, which is the message I overrided with. Now I understand that this is a very simple example, but you can kind of see how you can put code back in a pattern that everything uses, and then, for example, your security functionality. This is the best example I can always give. If you want some security functionality that you want every function within your application using, you can write that security functionality once, put the inheritance for it back far back in the patterns, something that you know that every function or all your screen functions or whatever you want this to go on uses, and that code will automatically be put in all of those functions. And to show you kind of how this kind of works, you can see here, I'm going to look at the actual inheritance path of my person tab function. Sorry, let me drag this over to the other monitor. Okay, so you can see here that as we go up, we see all the things we inherit from. So you can see the last thing I inherit from, which is my hello world. You can see I'm doing other things like initialize my map. I'm adding the tab strips. You can see I'm putting some, and this is just getting more and more into standard Plex inheritance, but I'm just doing a standard UI function. This is what gives me my panels. And you can see I have just a normal function shell, which sets up just basically the layout of my action diagram. So you can kind of see the inheritance all the way here. And so let me go ahead and show you the inheritance of the work with persons table that we looked at earlier. And you can see here, as we inherit, we're just inheriting things for look and feel, but you can see here we're inheriting something called display file. And this is the pattern that is created to take your normal display file functionality and bring that into the migrated environment. So everything that inherits from display file will be what was your display files in 2E, and so it will behave exactly the same way throughout the application for all your display files. And so then all you have to worry about from there is once your thing inherits from the display file, you just have to worry about the custom code on top of that in this exact same way you would develop in 2E. And so you can see here that what we've really done here is to try to make your application an easy transition for your developers. If you were trying to take your 2E application and migrate it to just pure Java, your entire 2E development group would have to learn how to develop in pure Java, which is a much steeper learning curve than what we have in this process. And so in this process, you can see everything is named in a way that's familiar to the 2E developer. The syntax is very similar to what you would see as a 2E developer. And so the transition is much easier for you in this circumstance. And so finally, I want to just kind of give a small tour of the Eclipse development environment. In the Eclipse development environment, this is basically what's handling actually building all of our Java code and deploying everything out into the web. And so here's an example of our work with persons table. And here, if I can go back to the Plex model. Oops. You can see here, if I go down in triples, it has an implementation name of INA0DFR. And so you can see in the name up in the tab, INA0DFR. So everything, all the naming is all similar to what you have. So if you ever want to find a function and debug it and see what it looks like, you just look for that exact same implementation name. And you can see here in the actual source code, there's comments of the exact action diagram statement that is being run. So your transition into debugging this is much simpler because you can see exactly what's related in the Plex code itself. So again, everything from implementation names to functionality to field implementation names, field behaviors, field lengths, values under those fields, states under those fields that you use for comparisons. All of those things are migrated directly into the Plex application to make it work and function the exact same way that it did when you were developing in 2E. Except now you have a much more modern, more powerful development environment, and you have a rich web application and that you're able to take to stay with modern development standards and to keep everything as fresh and new as possible. And the web environment is so open-ended that you're able to keep up with whatever trends and whatever UI and whatever user interface ideas that you want to implement. So that's it for my demo. Thank you so much, and back to you, John.
Well, thank you, Abram. That was a really excellent demonstration. I hope everyone got a really clear understanding about how our process works and what you end up with at the back end. Okay, if that was interesting to you, and I hope it was, let me talk a little bit about the next steps. Okay, so we have a process to help you make an informed decision for modernization. Okay, we start off by doing an automated analysis. Okay, and that means we give you some scripts to run. You run these scripts over your model, and you get some metrics back to us on counts of objects from the model. From those counts, we can give you a very clear picture about what the cost will be for the project you want to undertake. Okay, assuming that meets your expectations, then move to a second phase. Okay, in the second phase, we do a combination of POC, proof of concept, and deep analysis. Okay, so we spend usually 6 weeks. We usually go on site for a week, we work with your subject matter experts, we get access to your models, and we work with you to develop a plan and proposal to do the modernization. And that will cover all aspects of the modernization, okay, from the automated part to the acceptance testing to getting your developers trained, and really all the aspects to make you successful with the modernization. So you have a really clear idea about what you're getting into, okay? And then you can make a very informed decision then to go forward or maybe to wait to a more opportune time. Okay, so I'd love to talk to you about this. We can be located at cmfirstgroup.com, and we'll welcome your questions and your inquiries on this technology. Thank you.